Okay, so this is a video designed for people who really have trouble improvising on changes, and they know all the theory and have all the options, but they don't really have a good sort of roadmap of how to do it. And I invented this kind of approach, which I think of as templates, but this kind of relates to the way I actually organise improvisation and the way I tend to improvise over tunes these days. And it's really very simple. So the idea is for any given tune, you have a pathway or a set of notes that you can play and embellish to create an improvisation. And you're not limited to just having one pathway through a tune, you could have several. Okay, but the idea is that you have this sort of idea, and then you use this as the basis of your improvised lines. So there's two steps to this. There's how you construct a template line, and there's how you improvise on it. So I just wanted to use a very simple example, but that's actually quite challenging. It often comes up in jam sessions and so on, which is Someday My Prince Will Come. I know I've done a video on it already, but I find this tune surprisingly and deceptively difficult, especially as I've often played it quite a lick. And the changes, are, if you're not used to playing jazz standards, there's a lot of chords and they come thick and fast. So often the best sort of initial spark for coming up with an improvised line is to look at the melody, and indeed improvisation on the melody is probably one of the most traditional ways to play jazz. So if we have a look at Someday My Prince Will Come, we can see the changes are really clearly spelled out in the melody. Okay, so we just take that first bit. We've got B flat major, E7, E flat major 7th, sorry, D7, E flat major 7th, I'm not sure if I said E, and then this move, I usually just play a B diminished with this note, whatever that note is, big G, I don't know what it is exactly within the chord. It's not a diminished note though. And then up to C minor, 7th, then F7, so it's C minor, G7, C minor, F7. And then there's this little thing here which can be a little bit deceptive if you're not used to soloing with this kind of thing. So D minor 7th, D flat, diminished 7th, C minor, F7, and then it's again. So I'm just going to take that little first half, and the melody kind of gives you a big hint, because that's the, that note is obviously the 5th of B flat, but then it's the 3rd of D7, 3rd of E flat major. So you get this. So, sorry. Okay, so you can use that as a basis of improvisation. Now there's also other notes in it as well. Now you'll notice that this is a similar kind of logic that I used for the Wayne Shorter tune I've just done, okay, last Friday. So it's a similar sort of thing. So we're just using these thirds as a way of improvising. It's good to learn the melody in different places. And then your bar. Okay, so we can use those notes as a basis of a template for an improvised line. So we can play, for instance, so that's very, very straightforward, but it works really, really well. I mean, I barely need to play it with the backing track, so hopefully you could hear how related that was to the original changes. So, that is the song, because I'm playing both the melody and the changes in one, and I'm improvising on it. So that's a result, I think. Now, you're not limited to just using the template out of the melody. I can come up with another template. For instance, maybe I can come up with something descending, perhaps. So let's start with this note. Oh yeah, okay, that's cool. And then maybe down to. Okay, so that's not chromatically descending, but it is descending. We got like a, and then we got the E flat major. Now, of course, you might be saying to yourself, oh, that relates to the other video that you're talking about comping, when you're talking about melodies on the comping, and you're talking about making the solo line out of the chords. And yes, this is just another way of looking at exactly the same thing. Anyway, here's an example of how it works on Someday. So you can see that I'm dipping in and out of that and incorporating my own sort of bebop lines and stuff as well as decoration. So there's a few things that you can do just to get started with embellishing a template. For instance, you know, I'm using other chord tones there at the beginning. Like that, you know. You know, you can even take them out of the chord shapes that I've shown in the other videos. And then, you know, maybe if you've got this shape, what's the next chord? Sorry, it's this, isn't it? And you've got other options, like I'm using some more kind of hip substitutions there, things that you might not necessarily come across quite so often in the original melody, but things like, you know, this is my, I like this way to play a 2-5-1. It's got country motion in it, right? So you go, you know, that creates a kind of cool line, I think. A little bit more. I'll start off with just the template. Okay, so you can notice like at the end there's a very traditional template line which goes 1, flat 7, 6, flat 6, and that works really well on progressions like, you know, or anything where it's going 1 to 4 to 1 again, and it just has a really, you know, a really strong sound, or the alternative, which is the one that goes up. Okay, both are like lines from the swing era. You can hear them on, you know, Basie records and all the rest of it. Now the thing that I think is quite interesting about that as well is the fact that, sorry, what was I going to say? I think it's quite interesting about that is obviously you can go a long way with it and you can play any modern tunes you want or anything else, but it kind of organises the playing for you, and it's something that links your improvisation to your chording quite strongly. And it's something that you pre-bake to a certain extent, so I'll be working out, you know, like, oh, you know, or that might be a bit lame going downwards, so can I go up? You know, that kind of thing, or I might be going, or I might be, you know, I might be, in the same way as I might work on comping by pre-baking like voice leading options, but I think the result is that you actually get, you know, something which you can then improvise more freely on. And if you get enough ways of moving through the changes, you'll be a better comper, but you'll also be a better soloist as well. As I think it was, I think it's Bobby Brum who said that how good a soloist you are is directly reflective of how good a comper you are. and I think he's onto something with that. So yeah, that was it. The point is that these are not guide tones. Guide tones can be useful, for instance, if I'm playing through dominance. You know, they can be useful, but often guide tones are a bit too clunky, I find. If you're always playing the thirds and sevenths on everything, it can sound a bit, you know, it can sound a bit too much. I mean, in this case, you know, the melody is a lot on the thirds, it might work, you know. But the first one is the fifth, right? So we don't play it. That's the third and seventh. That's the third and seventh. That's a flat 9. You know, but then comes things like this. And, you know, it doesn't feel right to play that combination. It feels like it's too, you know, like if I play a major seventh on this. I don't like that, you know, I like something a little bit more logical. You know, it all just comes out of the kind of knowledge that you've got of harmony and voice leading. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Have a think about that. Please post any thoughts you have below. This is something which I'm going to explore in a few videos, and I actually have already, as you may have noticed. Thanks for watching.